Okay, happy Tuesday. Welcome back. Today we're going to be continuing on with assignment number 2. So we're not starting a new page or anything just yet. You're just going to keep adding to the notes from last time. The stuff that I drew last time did get erased, so I'm going to have to redraw it really quick. And so as I do that, I'll just kind of talk out loud and recap some of the things we've discussed. Last time I introduced you to a scientist slash monk. What was his name? Gregor Mendel, right? And Gregor Mendel lived in Austria in a monastery, and he worked with what kind of plant? Green garden peas, right? With peas. In peas, he paid attention to peas because they had a lot of variety to them, right? Remember we talked about the difference between a character and a trait. Which one of those two words is more general? A character. And which one's more specific? Trait, right? So the character we were looking at today, or last time, the character that we were studying, that he was looking at, was the character of flower color. And what were the two flower colors that we saw last time? Purple or white, right? Now, in his first hybrid cross, remember we talked about plant sex and how flowers are used to reproduce and all that stuff. In the first generation, which we call the P generation, P stands for parent generation, he took a purple flower. I'm going to go ahead and draw this. And he crossed it with a white flower. And what did he get in the next generation, everybody? Every single one of them was purple. Right? 100% purple in the second generation. And by the way, what's the second generation called? No, not F2, not yet. Don't skip one. It's the F1. Okay? So whenever you see the word F1, that's referring to the first generation of children. The one that comes after that is the F2. Now, to get the F2, who did he mate together? The siblings, right? Two of the F1s. He mated these two together. And he expected to get all purple, but what did he get? Nessa. I don't want to have to take that. You told me. He got a 3-to-1 ratio. Thank you, Abigail. A 3-to-1 ratio where out of thousands of plants, he always got 75% of them are purple and 25%, 1 out of 4, was white. Okay? And that's where we left off last time. And the thing that was kind of interesting, and I saw a lot of people asking questions about this, is why do traits seem to skip a generation, right? How many of you guys, in looking at the pictures of your family, notice that like there was something that maybe like skips a generation, either from grandparents to you or so on? Katie saw some? Okay. I know a lot of people in my first period noticed that too, right? Sometimes traits seem to, like you look at your picture and compare it to your parents, and you're like, I don't really look like my parents, but I definitely look like my grandparents, right? Colin looks a lot like, he looks actually more like my dad and my wife's dad had a kid together. It's really funny, like certain pictures. Yeah. No, don't think you're overthinking it. I'm saying, let me say it again. Colin, if you look at Colin's features, right? If we have time, I'll pull up some pictures so you can see it. But when you look at Colin's features and certain facial expressions, he looks less like me and my wife, and he looks more like my dad and my wife's dad. So sometimes we joke that our dads had a kid together, and then it was their grandson. Okay? But I'm not saying they did. Yes. Okay. Clarifying. So Mendel's seeing that, right? That there's this skipping of a generation where white seemingly gets erased and then it appears again. And this really piques his interest, and it makes him wonder, like, how is this all possible, right? And so after doing a lot of research, after thinking about a lot of this, and this is where you guys start writing again, here is what Mendel comes up with. Okay, I'm going to type this just so it's a little neater for everybody to see. Mendel, after studying his peas, comes up with two rules of inheritance. Give you a chance to copy that down. And again, we're just adding this to assignment number 2, okay, beneath our drawing of the flowers. Here's rule number 1. For any given character, okay, in our example here, it's flower color, an individual will always have 2 copies of a gene. And why do we have 2 copies of a gene? Because we get each copy, or we get 1 copy from each parent. So I'm going to do a little drawing here just to represent this, okay? Are you guys familiar with chromosomes? I've talked a little bit about them, right? How many chromosomes do humans have? 46 in all of your cells, right? And plants also have chromosomes too. So what we're going to do here is we're going to draw just one set of chromosomes, okay, for this pea plant. This chromosome is a chromosome. We're going to call this chromosome number 1. And I'm kind of making this up. I don't think it's actually found on chromosome number 1, but we're just going to call it this. Okay, this is going to be chromosome 1 from the dad of the pea plant. And this is going to be chromosome 1 from the mom side of the pea plant. Okay, now why do we have 2 chromosome 1s, 1 from each parent? Because if you remember from last semester, we talked about diploid and haploid cells. Right? When 2 people have sex and the sperm and the egg come together, the sperm has chromosomes 1 through 23. The eggs have chromosomes 1 through 23, and then they join together. And that way you have a chromosome 1 from your mom, a chromosome 1 from your dad, a chromosome 2 from your mom, a chromosome 2 from your dad. 3, 4, 5, 5, all the way up to 23. Right? And that's why 23 chromosomes from mom, 23 from dad add up to 46. Right? Well, plants do the same thing. Okay, I don't actually remember how many chromosomes pea plants have, but on chromosome 1, let's say that at this location of the chromosome, that this is where flower color is stored. Okay, this is the location. Go ahead and jot this down. This is the location of the color gene. Okay, remember, chromosomes are the double helix, but it gets like wrapped up and condensed into like a long bar. So this is still DNA, right? And at this location on both chromosomes, that's where the color is stored. And what Mendel is saying is that whether you're a purple flower or a white flower, all these plants, all these peas, always have 2 copies of this color gene. Okay, 1 from each parent. And what he says is that what differs from them is between one or the other is that there's kind of 2 versions of a gene. Okay, you guys remember how like everybody has the same character? Like everybody has eye color, right? But does everybody have the same eye color? No, right? Some people have brown, some have blue, some have hazel, right? In the same way here, these plants, every pea plant has a gene for flower color. But are the actual colors the same in every plant? No, some are purple and some are white, right? And so what Mendel says is that these copies can exist in different variations. What he calls an allele. Okay, that's a new key term for today, allele. An allele is a specific version of a gene. And so what we see here is, I'll go ahead and draw this out. If we were to draw in, let's say on this dad's chromosome here, that there is a certain sequence of ATGs and Cs in the DNA at this location, and we would call this the purple allele. Okay? So this one, we're going to call it a purple allele. And then just for sake of example, this other one could be purple or it could be white. And in this case, let's go ahead and just make it a white allele. Okay, and again, that's a variation of the same gene, right? The gene is for color, but it's a different variation of it. And this gene, its sequence of DNA, causes the flower to be white. Now, if we go back to the previous picture, I'm going to say a word you might have heard of before, and that word is dominant, right? Which color seems to be the dominant color in pea plants? Purple, right? Purple seems to be stronger. It takes over. It's seen more often, right? And so the purple allele is going to be the dominant one. And we are going to represent that with a big P, a capital letter P. Okay? Whereas the white allele is known as the recessive one. Recessive, for purposes of our class, means that it's weaker, it's not as strong. And so what's the smaller version of a capital P? A lowercase p. Okay? So in this drawing that we drew here of the two chromosomes, this plant got one purple allele from one parent, from the dad, and one allele, the white allele, from its mom, which means it has a big P and a little p. Okay? So that's kind of like the first thing that Mendel comes up with. Okay? Now, is that the only combination of P's of alleles that you could have? The answer is no, right? You can have a lot of different combinations. You could have, why don't you guys tell me, what are the different possibilities? If we just have big P's and little p's, but everybody has to have two, what could you have? Like one possibility is one capital and a lowercase. What's another way to do it? Not sure. I'll show you. We could have big P and a big P. Right? What does that mean? That means that on the mom and the dad's chromosomes, both of them inherit a copy of the purple. Okay? Another option is you could have what we already drew over here, which is big P, little p. And that means that that individual, that pea plant, inherited a purple allele from one parent and a white allele from the other parent. What's the last option? What's the last possible combination? Two small ones, right? You could be little p, and that means that from both parents, you inherit the white allele. Does that make a little more sense? Okay. So his first rule is that for any given character, right, it could be height in the pea plants, it could be the color, it could be the number of peas, and this applies to humans too, right? For eye color, for the character of eye color, all of us have two copies of eye color genes, one from our mom's side and one from our dad's side, right? And what's kind of interesting is, like, so my side, if you guys can't tell, I'm Asian. So my family, my whole lineage, everybody's got brown eyes. My wife's side, though, has an interesting combination. Her dad's got brown eyes, her mom's got blue eyes, her brother and sister have blue eyes, my wife's got green eyes, right? So when my wife and I come together and we make a baby and we get Colin, what's interesting is I know for sure Colin has one copy from me that's brown and one copy that's green from her, right? Now, does that automatically mean that he's going to have like greenish brown eyes? Not necessarily, right? Some of you guys may have seen this in your own family, right? That the parents have different eye colors, but the kid only has one of them, not both of them, right? And in Colin's case, he actually has my eyes. He's got brown, right? And the reason is because brown is considered to be dominant over green and blue, okay? So that's kind of Mendel's first rule. His second rule is this. Nessa, wake up. His second rule is this. Of these two alleles, sit up straight. Put your legs down. Just wake yourself up a little. Of these two alleles, an individual can only give one of them to each of their kids. So, for example, if you are, I'll draw the chromosomes out just to give you a visual here, okay? If a flower is big P, and it's got 2 copies of the purple, it's never ever going to be able to give both of them to their kids, okay? It's going to take one of them and the other, and it's going to split them apart. And let's say this is a male. That male is going to make a sperm, and each sperm is only going to have one of those big P's, one of those chromosomes. Okay? In the same way, if an individual is heterozygous, sorry, you haven't actually heard that word yet, so I shouldn't use that. If the individual is big P, little p, right? One's purple and one's white. It can give their kids one or the other, but never ever both. And if you have 2 recessive alleles, 2 copies of the white gene, again, you can only give them one or the other, but never both. Okay? Be really careful here, guys, to make your capital P's and little p's look different, okay? Because I know they can look really, really similar. So here's the deal, right? My wife gives Colin the green copy of the eye color. I give Colin the brown one. And so he's got one of each color, but his eyes are actually brown. When he, one day, many, many years from now, when he has kids, right, he's going to give his kids one of his 2 alleles. So he can pass down to my future grandkid, let's say the first one, he can give his kid the green one from his mom or the brown one from me, but never ever both. Does that make sense? And the reason why we only give one is because the other letter is going to come from the other parent, right? All of these are sperm, so this represents the male, but the female is doing the same thing on her side. Oops, sorry, that's not male. Oh no, that is male, sorry. The female is on this side making eggs that also either have a big P or a little p. Yeah. Ooh, that's a trippy one, the heterochromy one. Yeah, I've seen like a lot of pictures, and it's kind of coming back. Like there's a few TikTokers that have, or they say they do. I don't know if it's colored contacts or not, but that's kind of a tricky one because in reality, eye color is a little more complicated. It's not as straightforward as just one gene controlling it. But very, very, very rarely humans can have like a different eye color in each side. It's more common in some animals. Like there's certain species of dogs where it's really common. I don't know if anybody has one of those dogs. I don't know if it's like border collies or huskies sometimes have that, right? Where it's like a different color on each side. But that's all a matter of inheritance, right? What's happening is like there's kind of a clash in the instructions from one side of the family versus the other, right? That's a really good question. But what I'm trying to get at here, guys, is that the reason why there's only 1 P in all of these is because 1 P from the sperm and 1 P from the egg, when they join together, let's say these 2 come together, that's going to give the baby 2 P's, right? And that meets the rule of rule number 1, which is for any given character, we always get 2 alleles, 1 from each parent. Does that make sense? Now, I know this is like kind of tricky, so what we're going to do here is now that we've understood these 2 rules and we know what the word allele means and what dominant and recessive means, we're going to actually go back to our original drawing. And I want to show you why we end up getting, first of all, the numbers that we get, right? Why is it that all the F1s are purple, and why is it that in the F2 we got a 3-to-1 ratio, okay? I'm going to ask you guys to actually add to this drawing. We're going to write some letters in to represent these genes. It can be a little tight. I don't know how small you drew your flowers, but try to make it fit somehow, okay? If you need to, we can always redraw it later so it makes sense to you. So let's start off with the first generation, the parent generation. Mendel is going to get a purple flower from a lineage that's called a purebred. What does it mean if a dog is purebred? If it's like a purebred husky, what does that mean?
It's all husky?
Yeah, that means it's 100% husky, right? Its parents and all the generations back, it's always been a husky as far as we know, right? That's purebred. So this purple flower here, we're going to consider to be purebred, which means it's always been purple. So if all of its family has always been purple, I think it's pretty safe to say that this flower, the two letters it's going to have, the two alleles it has, is big P, big P, right? It's got two copies of the purple allele. Does everybody understand that? Okay. How about the white flower? What do you think the white flower has? Well, it's not going to be big P, little p because purple is dominant to white, all right? So the only way we're going to see white flowers is if we see two copies of the recessive allele, all right? If we see two copies of the little one. So this purebred white flower is going to be little p, little p. So go ahead and add that to your drawing that we made last time. Okay? Now, we've met rule number 1, right? For a given character, both of these individuals have two alleles, one from each of their parents. But when it comes time to pass their genes on, how many of these two can this purple flower pass on? Only one of them. Okay? Guys, I know you're kind of sleepy, but please don't miss this. This is really important. If you don't get this, the next couple weeks are going to be really rough for you. Okay? This flower has two, but it can only give one. Okay? It either gives a big P or a big P, but never both at the same time. Okay? And let's just say that this purple flower is going to be the male. So these are going to be sperm. We'll turn these into sperm. This white flower, same deal, right? It's got little p, and this one's going to be the female in this story. So she's going to make eggs, and what's going to be inside each of the eggs? A little p, right? She's going to take the two letters she has and split it. So she'll either pass on to her kids her mom's copy or her dad's copy. Now, in this case, it doesn't matter because they are exactly the same. Okay? So to make babies, sperm and eggs always have to come together, right? And so given the parent sperm, the gametes, and given the mom's gametes, the eggs, what are all these F1s going to have? If sperm and egg have to come together, all of these kids are going to have what two letters? A big P and a small p. You guys understand why that is, right? Because this purple flower is going to give every kid a big P because all of his sperm, both his sperm, are big P's. Okay? Now, I know some of you guys might be wondering, like, wait, he only has two sperm here and there's 4 kids. What if he runs out of sperm? That doesn't happen, right? Remember, when flowers make pollen, they're making millions and millions and millions of pollen grains, right? And all those pollens have the sperm inside. So this purple flower is making millions of sperm, and all of them are going to be big P's. On the female side, it's the same thing. When she goes and makes eggs, all her eggs have a little p in there. So that means she's going to pass that little p on to all of her F1s. And so you can see all the F1 generation has a dominant and a recessive. And this is where we see true dominance. Okay? It's pretty easy to understand that when both copies of your gene say purple or both of them say white, that the flower is going to be purple or white. But what happens when you have a dominant and a recessive is the dominant one is going to win and take over. At least that's the way we can think about it for now, right? And that's why all of these flowers are purple. Okay? Let's add to our notes off to the side somewhere right here. The F1 is all purple because the purple allele dominates over the white. And that's why we have 100% purple flowers in F1. What's kind of interesting about this, though, and I know you guys are still writing, but I'll just kind of talk out loud, is remember last time we were saying that Mendel expected like a blending of the two, right? He expected like light purple or purple with white spots or white with purple spots. And when he saw this, his first thought was that white had gotten erased. But now that you know about the genes and the alleles, and you guys look at the letters up there, is white actually erased? Is it gone from those flowers? No, it's just kind of hiding in there, right? It's dormant, so to speak. And it's just hanging out in there. It's not being used because the flowers are obviously purple. But the fact that the white is still there means that white can still be passed on to the next generation. Okay? And so that's what we're going to do now for the F2, right? Mendel takes these two and mates them together to get the F2 offspring. And we're going to do exactly the same thing that we did with the first generation. We're going to take these two letters and we're going to split them. Okay, and this is where I'm going to run out of room a little bit. Hopefully you guys will do okay with this. So this one, let's say this is the male, and it's making the sperm. This time, half the sperm will have a big P, and half the sperm will be what? A little p. That makes sense? Why? Because you've got these two letters, and then they're going to get split apart, right? And in this female, the same thing is going to happen. Half her eggs are going to have the dominant purple, but half of her eggs are going to have the recessive. So we have sperm 1 and sperm 1 and sperm 2, egg 1 and egg 2. Okay? And what we want to do here is come up with as many combinations of sperm and eggs as possible to look at all the possible crosses that could happen. So this is where I need a little bit more audience interaction here. Okay, you guys just tell me, what are the kids going to have? If sperm 1 joins with egg 1, then what will the kids have? Which P's are they going to have? Big P and big P. Very good. And if both copies, both alleles are big P, what color is that flower going to be? It's going to be purple, and that's what we see there, right? If sperm number 1 joins with egg number 2, what are the two letters that it's going to have? Big P and small p. And what color is the flower going to be? It's going to be purple because purple dominates over white, right? It's the same thing that happened in the F1. Are there any other combinations using sperm number 1 that can be made? No, that's all we can do, right? So let's move on to sperm number 2. If sperm 2, the little p, joins with egg number 1, what do we get? Small p, big P. Okay, but watch this, guys. We still write it like this. We never put the little p first, like this. Okay, we never do that. Always write the capital letter 1 first. Okay, so big P, little p is going to result from that, and that's going to make another purple flower. And here's the big kicker. This is the one. Remember Mendel? Like, it skipped a generation. And he was like, "Whoa, what the heck happened there? How do we end up with this white flower?" Well, there's a 25% chance that sperm 2 joins with egg 2. And if that happens, this flower is going to end up with what two letters? Little p, and it's going to end up being white. And that is how he figured out that 3-to-1 ratio. Okay? He did this over and over again with flower colors. He did this with height. He did it with all kinds of different characters. And he kept finding this 3-to-1 ratio. And that's what solidified his ideas about how we inherit things. I know it seems really simple, but keep in mind, at the time, people had no idea why we inherited things and how we got things from our parents. Mendel was the first to say, no, it's not a spiritual thing. It's not about essence. Your parents are physically giving you something to your cells that your cells use as instructions to make up all the traits that you have. And whether you're talking about flower color or your height or your eye color or your hair or even your voice, if you go down deep into your body and you look at the enzymes your stomach makes and the proteins that make up your heart that beat, every time your heart beats, all of those are coded by the genes that our parents give you. And all of those, you got one copy from mom, one copy from dad. It doesn't mean that you're going to see both of them, right? Sometimes you see one or the other, or sometimes it's a blend of the two, but that's kind of the basics of how genetics works. Okay? So I'm going to skip ahead here down to the end. I'm going to give you a couple more key terms, and then we're going to be done with this. Okay? So important genetics vocab. You guys already know character versus trait, so I'm not going to give you a definition for that, but you should know the difference there. Another set of words that you should already know by this point is dominant versus what? Not submissive. Close, though. It kind of means similar things. Recessive. Okay? It's okay. And then here come the next two words that we're going to compare. And this one I am going to write a definition first. So I'm going to kind of space it out a little bit so that we can have some room to work with. Okay? You need to know the difference between these two words, genotype versus phenotype. How do you remember these two? Actually, let me give you the definition first, and then I'll give you the tip on how to remember it. The genotype is the combination of two letters that one gets, or that someone gets, one allele from each parent. Right? So in all these drawings that we made earlier and all the labels we just did, every flower had two letters. And that's what we refer to as their genotype. Okay, so the way we would use that word is I would say, like, if I know you're copying this down, I'm going to go back. I'll come back to this, don't worry. And when we look at this flower at the very top, this first one up here, and I say, hey, what's the genotype of the purple flower in the parent generation, the P generation? We would say the genotype is big P, big P. Okay? If I asked you what the genotype of the white flower is, you would say the genotype is little p, little p. It's the combination of two alleles that you get. Okay? However, we don't really like saying big P, little p forever. It's not exactly professional. And in the scientific world, they like to give more technical terms for this. Okay? So we have some key terms that you're going to need to know. And here they are. Homozygous, and I'm going to write that 2 times, you'll see why, and heterozygous. Now, what does the word homozygous or heterozygous mean, or what does it refer to? Well, hopefully you remember from first semester that when sperm and eggs come together, they make the very first cell that you are, and that cell is called a zygote. You guys remember that? Okay, I'll draw that up here. So sperm plus egg equals a zygote. So when you use the word homozygote or heterozygote, what's homo and hetero mean? Homo means the same. Hetero means different. Okay? So when something is homozygous, it means that you have a zygote that resulted from sperm and egg coming together where both letters are the same. Hence, homozygous. Right? When something is heterozygous, that means you have a zygote that has 2 letters, but the letters are not the same. They're different from each other. Okay? So examples of homozygous in our example here would be, and I'm going to put this over here because we're going to type in another word right here, okay? Big P and big P, that would be a homozygous genotype because both letters are the same. They're both purple alleles and both dominant. Another option would be that they both are little p's, right? Because then they'd be homozygous also. So how do we tell the difference between big P's and little p's? It's really simple. After the word homozygous, it always must be followed with another word. So the big P is going to be called homozygous dominant, whereas the other one is going to be called homozygous recessive. Okay, and I'm going to try to position that so it's right after, like that. So that is homozygous dominant, that's homozygous recessive. How about the heterozygous? Do we need to say heterozygous dominant or heterozygous recessive? That's not necessary, right? Because when you say something is heterozygous, we automatically know that they have one dominant, one recessive. So they're going to be big P and little p. Now, I want to finish this lecture with a little story and something to remember this by, okay? Because there's a really important relationship. Oh, I forgot to give you the definition over here. I'm sorry. I got a little ahead of myself. I was looking at this and I'm like, why is it blank over here? So genotype is the combination of the 2 letters, right? And you can remember this because in the word genotype, you see the word gene, right? this is referring to the 2 genes that you inherit, one from each parent. So genotype is like all about your DNA. Okay? But phenotype, you guys see the word PH right there? Right? That should remind you of the word physical. So what do you guys think the phenotype is? If the genotype is the letters, you want to take a guess? The body parts is what they physically look like, right? So the phenotype is the physical, observable traits that the individual has. So for example, purple flowers, blue eyes, etc. Okay? If you can look at it and notice it and describe it, then that is referred to as their phenotype. And you can remember that because phenotype starts with PH, just like the word physical. Okay? I know there's a lot of vocab here, but we're going to need to do some, and we're going to get some practice with it today in today's lab. But what I want to do here, I'm going to give you guys like another 10 seconds to finish writing down the definition of phenotype. I want to go back to the flowers, and I'm just going to give you guys, we're just going to do like some rapid fire questions just to get practice with all of this. Okay? And I know you guys are tired. It's the end of the day. It's you know, you're ready to go home. I'm ready to go home too. But if you could wake yourself up and kind of join me on the practice, it's really going to pay off in the long run. Okay, is everyone done? Okay, let's go back to this. Okay, in this picture, help me out here. What are the genotypes of the P generation, the parent generation? Okay, we're not going to say big P's or little p's. Look in your notebook. What's the key term? This one here has what genotype? Everybody? Homozygous dominant, right? 2 letters that are the same, both are dominant. This one's homozygous dominant. What is the genotype of the white flower? Homozygous recessive. Okay? If an individual is homozygous dominant for flower color, what is its phenotype going to be? What is the physical observable trait that you see? What do they look like? They are going to be purple. Okay? So I'm going to say that again. If this parent is homozygous dominant, then its phenotype is purple. Okay? If this individual has a genotype of homozygous recessive, it results in a phenotype of being a white flower. Does that make sense? Okay, let's try it again. In the F1, 100% of the F1s have what genotype? All of them are, come on everybody. Repeat after me, heterozygous. Okay? Heterozygous is their genotype or phenotype? Genotype. Okay? And if they have the heterozygous genotype, what is the phenotype of all of these individuals? What's their physical trait that you can see with your eyes? They are all purple. Okay? All right, one last time. Actually, why don't you do this? Instead of just saying it to me, well, you can say it to each other. Is that a little bit better? No? It's not better? You want to do it as a class? All right, we'll just finish it then. All right, this flower here, what is its genotype and what is its phenotype? Go. This first flower. Genotype is? Okay, homozygous dominant. What is its phenotype? No, phenotype is purple, right? Which is dominant. These 2 flowers here, what are their genotypes? Heterozygous. And what phenotype do they have? Purple. This last flower here, what is its genotype? There we go, homozygous recessive. And what is its phenotype? It is white. You catching on? Okay. You could do this with your own, you could look in the mirror and you could, when you look at your eyes and you describe everything, right? And you say, I have brown eyes, I have black hair, I have a long nose, my earlobes are a certain shape. All of those are your phenotypes, right? But deep down, what's controlling that are the genes, your genotype, that you inherited from your parents, okay? Now I'm ready for the last bit. I have a little story to tell you. So years and years and years ago, probably 8, 9 years ago, I went to Atlanta, Georgia for a wedding. It was my cousin's wedding, and I'd never been to Atlanta before. And so I wanted to go and explore because I like checking out new places. My family, on the other hand, they're a bunch of homebodies. So they're like, we'll just stay at Auntie's house. You take the car, you just go explore. So I take the car, and I have a great time. I'm like eating Southern food for the first time. I go to coffee shops, and I'm driving, and I see this sign for a museum. I'm like, oh, I got time. I'm going to go check out this museum. I get there, and I realize it's not what I thought it was. I thought it was like a natural museum, like where I can see like fossils and animals and stuff. It was the Atlanta Museum of Puppetry. Yeah, it's actually really cool. And I was like, whatever, I'm here, right? So I bought a ticket, I went inside, and it was actually really cool. It was a whole museum of all these famous puppets in like TV and movie history. They had like the original puppets from Sesame Street there. Do you guys remember like Sabrina the Teenage Witch? There was like this show, and there was like a puppet of a black cat named Salem. Does that sound familiar at all? It might be a little beyond your time. Well, anyways, there are all these famous puppets there, right? And I'm walking around looking at it, and some I didn't even recognize, and some I did, and they were going to the history of puppetry, from shadow puppets to string puppets to marionettes, all that stuff. And I thought I was kind of done, so I walked back towards the beginning, to the entrance, and there was a sign there, and it said, live puppet show starting in 15 minutes. And I was like, I'm in a puppet museum. I gotta watch the puppet show, right? And so I go in there, and the theater, it's like this little stage, probably about the width of the front of the classroom here. And then there's a whole amphitheater, and it's completely empty. So I'm like, oh, great. This is just going to be a show for one. And I sit myself right in the middle, and I'm like, okay, about 10 minutes. I'll just wait here. 5 minutes before the show starts, the doors swing open, and like in pours hundreds of elementary school kids. They were here on a field trip. And I was like, I'm not giving up my seat for kids. So they just came in, and they filled up around me. And so... And the teachers didn't even sit with them. The teachers were standing on the edge. So if you're looking at this theater here, it's like everyone's head's down here, and then I'm like sticking up like this. Like I'm in the middle, just in a sea of children, right? And the puppet show starts, and it's delightful. It's a marionette puppet show, so that, they're pulling the strings and stuff, and it's about this ballerina. It's kind of like a Cinderella story, and so the puppets like dancing and singing songs and moving around, and the kids, because they're like kindergartners, first grade maybe, they're like oohing and awing and whoa, whoa, and they're like, and I look at them, and there's this like delight in their eyes, because they really think the puppet's dancing, and I sit back, and I'm like, kids are so dumb. Like, that's not real. I went to college. Yeah, well, now I've got a son. Yeah, he's pretty dumb sometimes. Well, I was like, I went to college. I know that puppet is not real. There's someone back there, there's somehow, I don't know fully how, but they're making those puppets move, right? So after like 15 minutes, it's a really short show. The puppet show ends, everybody claps, and then here's the kind of cool thing, right? The whole show, while we're watching this, like it kind of looks like this. Like there's a curtain on one side, a curtain on the other, and then there's this stage where everybody's dancing. There's another curtain though that's up here, and when the show is over, they pull that curtain up, and above that is this like big wooden platform with people up top, right? The puppeteers. And the kids are like, oh my gosh. And then the puppeteers like showed the kids like, see, if I move my hand this way, the puppet waves. And if I move this way, the puppet dances. And they're like learning for the first time that like how puppets work. And I'm like, stupid kids. Like I knew that, right? So I know. I'm being mean. I mean, it's fun to make fun of kids. But anyways, why do I think of this? Because, and let's try to make a little connection here, okay? When you look at someone, when I look into my wife's eyes, okay, and I see one of the, I'm not gonna lie, the first thing I noticed about her was she has really, really curly hair. That's what I noticed first. The second thing I noticed was she had really beautiful green eyes, okay? When I see her eyes, right, and her eyes are making a move, and it's dancing, and it's putting on a show for me, and that's what I see, right? Is that my wife's genotype or phenotype? What am I looking at? It's her physical traits. So I'm looking at her phenotype, right? So when you look at something like eye color, that's their phenotype. But kind of like the puppets, puppets don't move on their own. Puppets have to be controlled by somebody, right? And so what's controlling my wife's phenotype behind the scenes? Well, you guys learned last semester that the only reason we make certain proteins is because we inherit certain DNA, right? It's the DNA sequence that gives the eyes the color. It's the DNA sequence that gives the flowers their color, right? And so behind the scenes, there's some kind of genotype standing on the platform up here, holding, the marionette strings that are then connected to the puppet, controlling everything. And that is the genotype. Okay? And that's how I want you guys to remember this relationship, right? When you look at somebody or you look at an animal or you look at a plant, you're looking at and enjoying their phenotype. But what determines all of that is the genotype. It's the genes that they inherited from their parents. And for every given character, Mendel says, we all inherit 2 copies of these genes, one from mom and one from dad. What's interesting though, guys, is that the phenotype we have, the thing we end up seeing, is either one or the other, and sometimes it's both. It's kind of complicated, right? And that's why I was looking at your questions, and a lot of you guys were wondering in your questions, why do I look more like one side of my family than the other, right? Why is it that when I look at my eyes, I have my mom's eyes, and my dad's eyes are not there. They're just erased, right? Or why is it that when I look at family pictures and I compare them, like if I see a picture of my grandma when she was my age, we look identical. And not me, but but those questions are all answered because of Mendel's work with genotypes and phenotypes, okay? And so if you want, you can quickly draw this picture of the little puppet show if it helps you remind you of what's going on there. But more importantly, if you don't draw it down, I want you to write this, okay? Genotype determines, sorry, it's kind of messy, determines your phenotype. Always. Not the other way around. I know that took a little while. But on that note, now that you know how all this works, let's make some babies.
Yeah, let's do that. I don't really like hunting.
That's okay. We're overpopulated. We don't actually need more kids. Okay. I'm going to skip the break because you guys are actually going to go to the lab stations to do this part, and it's like really chill and really easy and kind of fun. So this will kind of be like the rest of the class. Yeah, go ahead and glue this in. This is going to be assignment number 3. This is called the Penny Sex Lab. No, you're not having sex with pennies, but you're having sex using pennies.
Oh, how romantic.
So romantic.
What?
That's not romantic.
What?
This is called the Penny Sex Lab. Let's make it 10 points.
Penny?
Yeah, the Penny Sex Lab. Sorry, those of you guys that are at home, I realize I have to stay here so you can hear me. Okay, so if you're at home, I just gave this handout to everybody. I'm going to put the link up for this on Canvas. So they're actually doubles. So when you print it out, you'll get 2 of these. Just cut it in half and then throw one away, and the other goes into your notebook. This is going to be assignment number 3. It's going to be worth 10 points. Huh? It's whatever your next available page is in your notebook. Yeah. So, I'm about to start. Do you need pennies? They're doing it right now? Oh, fancy. Does it? Oh, I'm going to remember that. Okay. Let's go ahead and read this together, and then I'm going to walk you through some of it and maybe do an example with you, and then you guys can go off and do it on your own, okay? Congratulations! You're going to have a baby! Yay! In today's lab, you and a partner will each get a genuine United States penny. It's very expensive. And use it as a model for exploring how traits can be inherited by children. For each of the characters on the face traits sheet, which is this goldenrod sheet right here, people at home, you will have this as well on the document. Each parent will flip a coin to determine which allele they pass on to their kids, assuming that both parents are heterozygous for every character. Okay. Let me stop there for a second and kind of just break it down for you. I know it's kind of hard to see. I don't know if, let me see if I can make this. Let me stop annotating for a sec. Oh, this is kind of cool. It's kind of like a giant, hold on. Let me stop share. Here we go. Okay, you guys can all see this. So, okay, can you guys kind of see this? Yeah, it's kind of blurry. Okay, it's all right. So this is the face trait sheet, okay? It's double-sided, and you can see starting with the first one, this is doing your shape of your face, okay? Then you're going to go through this. Guys, I'm only going to go through instructions once. You're going to go through every part of your face, from face shape to your hair to your chin to your eyes, a bunch of things about your eyes, eyelashes, eyebrows, nose, mouth, ears, lips, what is that? Freckles and dimples, okay? So there's a bunch of different face traits. Now, I'm going to be upfront. This is not very realistic, okay? Because you're not going to actually pass on the traits you have. As we just read, what we're going to do is we're going to assume everybody is heterozygous for all of these. It just keeps it simple, okay? What does that mean again if you're heterozygous? You have one big and one little, right? One dominant, one recessive. So here's an example. The first one, let me see if I can zoom in enough. Can you guys see there's like 3 genotypes and 3 phenotypes there? Can you see that? Okay. The first one on the left is big R, big R. Okay. They just chose they choose the letters for you. If you're big R, you're going to have a round face. If you are big R, little r, if you're heterozygous, which all of you are, you're going to have a round face also. So it appears that round is dominant. If you are little r, you're going to have a squared face. Okay? I know this is not realistic. It's just kind of meant to be for fun. So here's how this is going to work. For face shape, all of you, regardless of how you look, all of you are going to start off as heterozygous. Okay? You're going to have a big R and a little r. Now, question. If you have, let me go back to the whiteboard here. If you are big R, little r, what can you pass on to your kids? Can you pass on both of them to your son or your daughter? No, you only pass on one of them, right? So whether you're male or female, you are going to take these 2 letters and you're going to split them apart and you're going to pass on either a big R or a little r. And based on the numbers here, what's the probability of each one? What's the chance of you passing on a big R or a little r? It's 50%, right? The same probability as flipping a coin, okay? So here's how this is going to work, okay? Kellen, is it okay if I partner up with you? Okay. Do you want to be the dad or the mom?
I don't care.
You don't care? Funny thing, I don't care either, so it's all good. Here, take a penny. So here's how this is going to work, okay? If I partner up with Kellen, right, and we do have to pick a gender at some point because we have to figure out what biological sex our kid's going to have, okay? We'll do that next. But we're both, guys, pay attention here, okay? Both Kellen and I are big R, little r. We both start off heterozygous. We can both pass on a dominant or a recessive, okay? Now here's how this is going to work. If you guys see, look down on below on your worksheet, it says a heads means that you will pass on the dominant trait, okay? So heads equals dominant, tails equals recessive. Okay? So we're going to figure out which one we're going to pass on to our kid and see what kind of face shape our kid gets. So Kellen, go ahead and flip your coin. What'd you get? He got a heads. That's a dominant. So he's going to give his kid the big R. I'm going to flip my coin. And I got heads also. So our kid is going to get a big R from you, a big R from me. We're going to bring that together. And so put this together, guys. What's the genotype of this child going to be? The genotype will be big R, big R. otherwise known as homozygous dominant. Okay? And what is the phenotype going to be? That's where we go back to our sheet. And we said if you're big R, you are going to have a round face. So genotype is going to be big R. Phenotype will be round. And I would record that on the sheet. Do you guys see on the, if you guys look at the table here, okay, the top, the very first row of the table, right here, it says face shape. Mom's allele is going to be big R. Dad's allele is going to be big R. The genotype is big R. Phenotype is round. And then just for practice, on the end, we're going to write homozygous dominant. Okay? Then we're going to go down and do the next one, which is the cleft on your chin. That basically means do you have a butt chin or not. Okay? And so you'll see this. We're changing the letters now to letter C. Okay? They choose the letters for you. Just look at the goldenrod sheet, and it tells you. So for this one, if it's big C, or big C, it's absent. You have no butt chin. But if you have little c, homozygous recessive, you're going to have that cleft chin. Okay? And then you're going to do hair, which is H, letter H. Wavy hair is W. Eyes will be E, A, and S, and so on. And you're going to make your way down the list. And every time, you guys are going to assume you're both heterozygous, flip a coin to determine if it's the dominant or recessive, and you're going to record it on the sheet. Okay? By the end of all this, you're going to have all the features of a baby face. And on the next full page, you're going to draw a picture of your baby. Okay? You're going to do a full page sketch of your baby with all the features that you see on the sheet. Does that make sense so far? Yes? Okay. One last thing. At the very top here, above the table, it says baby's gender. Okay? The way that biological sex works, if you forgot, if you are XY, you are what? If you have an X and a Y, you are male. If you are XX, you are biologically female. Okay? Now, there are mutations and there's things that can happen where people will end up with XXX. There are people with XXY. There's people with just a Y. There's a whole bunch of different things that could happen. Okay? But we're assuming this here. Now, the same rule applies. Don't miss this, guys. Ladies, when you make eggs, you have two X's. Why do you have two? Well, it's the same reason you have two of everything else. You get one from each parent, right? So all the ladies in here, you have an X from your mom and an X from your dad. All the guys, careful, this is a kind of a trick question. You have an X and a Y. Who did you get those from? Can you get a Y from your mom? No. Okay, the Y has to come from your dad, which means the X must come from your mom. In other words, moms, 100% of the eggs are going to have X in it, but dads, half the sperm have an X, half the sperm have a Y. In other words, the parent that determines your gender biologically was your dad. So if you're not happy with what you got, you can blame your dad, okay? Because it's a 50-50 chance. If you got this sperm and it joins with either of these eggs, you're going to be a female. If you got this sperm joined with either of these eggs, you are a biological male. Ethan.
Does that mean you're more likely to be a girl?
Not really. The chance is 50-50. Yeah, because it comes down to the sperm, right? So half the sperm are X's, half the sperm are Y's, so it's a 50-50 chance. Okay? So for this one, for the gender at the very top, the very first thing you're going to do is one of the parents is going to flip a coin, and it's going to be the dad. Okay? So whoever you choose to pair up with, you can do one guy, one girl, or it doesn't really matter. But for purposes of today's lab, someone has to play the mom and someone's going to play the dad. Whoever the dad is going to flip their coin, and if you get a heads, you're going to pass on to your kid an X, and you're going to have a daughter. If you flip a tails, you're going to pass on a Y, and you're going to have a baby boy. Okay? And you're going to record that. You're going to give them a nice name, whatever name you want, and then you're going to go through the sheet and flip coins for every feature to figure out genotype and phenotype. And then afterwards, you're going to draw a picture of your baby on the next page. Okay, you've got about 20 minutes to do this. It's not a lot of time. So you're gonna pair up. Come grab for each pair. You're gonna get 1 yellow sheet and 2 pennies, 1 for each parent. Okay, and please bring my pennies back when you're done. Let's go. 20 minutes. And those of you guys that are at home, you can go ahead and do this on your own. If you can flip for both parents, or if you want to have someone in your house flip for you, it doesn't matter. But you have everything you need. You just need to find a coin to flip, and you can do this from home. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and end the recording here because there's not much left to see. Have a great day. Thank you.